Hello, thank you for stopping by. My name is Becky and this is BecxReadz, and today I have a recommendation collab for you. Today, myself, along with a few of my fellow booktubers, will be giving you guys some recommendations with disability rep in it. July is Disability Pride Month, so I thought it would be a good time to share with you some books with disability rep of any kind in it. Collabing with me today is Jess from Honest Fiction, Liezl from Liezl Loves Books, Neva from Reading with Neva, and Ava from Ava's Romance Books. All their channels will be tagged down below. There will also be a playlist linked down below where you can find all of our recommendations in one spot, so be sure to check out these lovely ladies. But with all that being said, let's get on to the book recommendation. First up is Quiet and Kilted by Shane McClendon. This is a contemporary romance about Zoe, who is deaf. She moves to a new town in Colorado for a fresh start. Unfortunately, not a lot of people in this town speak sign language, so she sticks to herself. She minds her business, working as a librarian. She doesn't really interact with people too frequently, but she catches the eye of Nathaniel, who is working on renovating this library, and he is immediately attracted to her. And when his young daughter comes to the library for a school field trip, his young daughter starts interacting with Zoe because she knows sign language, because her grandmother and her aunt are also deaf. Through this mutual interaction, Nathaniel is able to convince Zoe to give their relationship a try, and he really pulls her out of her shell. Our main character, Zoe, is deaf, which means she uses sign language. She is also very good at reading lips. Next, I have Just Like Breathing by Diana Garden. This is another contemporary romance about Arden, who has lost her son and her husband in a recent accident. She herself just got out of a coma, so she is trying to adjust to this new life, and she's suffering from some PTSD when she literally runs into Flash one day when she is jogging through the park. Flash has recently lost his eyesight from a motorcycle accident, so he's trying to learn how to navigate the world as a newly blind person with a guide dog. And he ends up asking Arden to help him run around this park because running is a way that he reduces his stress, and he really misses it, but he needs somebody to guide him. And through that, a relationship blossoms between them. My next recommendation is 4 Years Trapped in My Mind Palace by Johan Twist. This is a general fiction with a little bit of magical realism and some historical fiction thrown in, so lots of genre crossovers here. This is about a 14-year-old boy named Aaron who is completely paralyzed. He's been in a coma, and he ends up getting moved to this nursing home to be the roommate to Solomon, who is an old man suffering with Alzheimer's. When Solomon falls asleep and he starts having dreams of his past life, somehow that pulls Aaron into his dreams. And Aaron is able to live out Solomon's youth and experience historic events as though they are happening to him. And through this, Aaron is able to communicate with Solomon, and Solomon is able to express what Aaron is thinking and feeling to the people around him. And they form a very unlikely friendship. This is a book that I wish everyone would read. If you don't read any other books on this list, I highly suggest you give this a try. It was so moving, and it had such a great platonic friendship between Aaron and Solomon. It was well researched. The author included in his author notes everything that he did to incorporate the historic events within this story. And this is a book that when I was trying to figure out my best books of the decade, this was my #1 book. Out of 50 books that I read to determine that, this is the book that stuck with me. So I highly, highly recommend this. The disabilities in here are, of course, he is paralyzed, he has a communication barrier, is a bit of mobility aid included in here as well. Next up is one of the coziest fantasies, almost feels like a fairy tale, that I have ever read, and that is A Daughter of the Trolls by Mackenzie Catron. In this, we are following 18-year-old Sparrow, who lives in this magical glen that she helps protect the creatures in this glen from this very evil witch called Black Annis. One day, this witch ends up invading this glen, and she ends up slaughtering almost all the people in it, and she also takes some people to keep as playthings in her cave. So Sparrow, who uses a wheelchair, she has to set out on this adventure through this forest that isn't equipped to handle a wheelchair with her childhood friend Rush. She really has to learn how to depend on others and trust others, and also just depend on the magic that is in this forest. So as I mentioned, cozy fantasy. However, this does have some darker elements to it. It gave me those classic fairy tale vibes that you would get from like Grimm's fairy tales and things like that. I would say this is a book that anyone from like 10 years to 100 years could read. It has a very sweet romance in it, no spice at all, but the relationship between Rush and Sparrow is just so sweet. It's a really short book, so it doesn't take any time at all to read, but the author herself uses a wheelchair, so it's very authentic in its representation, and it's one that I highly recommend people check out. Next, I have a historical romance recommendation, and that is Never Seduce a Scot by Maya Banks. In this, we are following Evelyn. She is deaf, but because it's a historical, nobody really knows this about her. She doesn't speak, and so people just say she's touched. But when an enemy clansman, Graham, comes for an arranged marriage between their two clans, she chooses to enter into this arranged marriage, hoping that it will get her away from this abusive man who wants to marry her. And when she gets there, Graham ends up discovering that she is not touched. She just can't hear. She's great at reading lips, and she is extremely smart. And their relationship is just so wonderful and so cute. I highly recommend this if you love historical romance. Another book with deaf representation in it is The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew. This is an upper YA dark academia paranormal. It is about Delaney, who is deaf, and she is tired of people treating her like she's glass just because she can't hear. So when she gets the opportunity to attend this very prestigious college that trains students to slip between parallel worlds, she takes it. And there she ends up running into this boy who she saved his life when he was 9 years old. And there's something mysterious about him. Their relationship starts developing as they are trying to discover some secrets that are happening within this college. And with Delaney being deaf, she uses a hearing aid, which is something that the other books that I've read with deaf representation don't touch on. So I liked that about this story. The next two recommendations are by the same author, and that is Neva Altej. So first up, we have Painted Scars. This is a dark mafia romance. Roman is the head mafia boss, and Nina's father owes him some debts. So his family suggests that he find himself a wife because he is in a wheelchair and he isn't seen as like the most aggressive or intimidating man. So because Nina's father owes him debts, he says, "Hey, give me your daughter. I want to marry her." So Nina agrees to reluctantly do this to help her father, and they end up being very attracted to one another, and their romance blooms from there. So the disability representation in here is Roman, who uses a wheelchair and a cane because he has some disabilities with his leg. And then book 2 is Broken Whispers. This follows Mikhail and Bianca. Mikhail is like the killer of the mob family, and Bianca is part of a different mafia family. She is also a ballerina. So Mikhail has been obsessed with Bianca. He will watch her dance and he leaves her roses, and he just pines from her from afar. But when he finds out that Bianca is the one who is put into an arranged marriage with their mafia family for alliances, he claims her as his own. They get married and their relationship blossoms from there. She discovers that he is a single father, and he finds out that she had a throat injury when she was younger that makes it very painful for her to talk. Because Bianca has a vocal disability, she can't talk, she uses sign language. He also has a disability. He has a visual disability. He is missing one of his eyes, and so he's very scarred. And Bianca doesn't allow him to be insecure with her like he is with a lot of other people. So they form a very strong relationship, and just the way they are together is so beautiful. And the last recommendation I have for you is an adult fantasy, and that is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. So in this, we are following a pre-Columbian America that follows various tribes that are trying to come together for the solar eclipse. And we have Serapia, who was intentionally blinded so that he could be a god vessel. He has to make his way to Tova for this eclipse because he is prophesized to be a big part of it. And he ends up meeting Shiala, who is a ship captain who is taking him to Tova for this event. Meanwhile, we also have the perspectives of this high priest and priestesses who know that something is going to occur, and they know that Serapio is going to play a part in it, and they are trying to stop that. This was an incredibly unique fantasy. I loved it. I loved seeing the influences from different tribes within this story. I also loved the connection between Shiala and Serapio. And Serapio being blind, he is able to see through the eyes of the crows around him. So he uses a little bit of magic to see, but he does have a visual disability. So those are my recommendations of books with disability rep in it. Let me know down in the comments if any of these sound good to you, or if you have read any of them, or let me know what your favorite book with disability rep is. If you've made it this far in the video, could you leave me a mushroom emoji to symbolize A Daughter of the Trolls, which is one of my favorites? And thank you so much to my fellow booktubers for wanting to collab on this. Again, check out that playlist down below for their recommendations. And until my next video, thank you so much for watching, and go read a book with disability rep in it. Bye!